Guten Tag and welcome to Klaus Cigar's very own Stammtisch 2024 edition. Today we will be pairing delicious cigars with beer. It's going to be wunderbar. Oh, shit. Sorry about that, y'all. I don't know what happened. What came over me? One moment I was preparing for a cigar review, and the next thing you know I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, preparing for Oktoberfest. Speaking of Oktoberfest, today's cigar review is the one and only Quesada Oktoberfest. This is the 2023 vintage edition, which, as you shall soon see, is pretty much the same thing as the 2024 edition, except that it's a little bit older. For the past 4 years, Quesada Cigars out of the Dominican Republic has left the cigar build or blend the exact same. So it's got a Mexican San Andres wrapper and the Dominican binder and filler goodies inside. At Claro, we stock the Das Boot, which is the Torpedo Vitola. Clearly, this is not a torpedo. This is the Robusto Vitola that was handed to me at PCA Trade Show 2023 by Mr. Quesada himself. So expect a little bit of a different size Vitola and shape in the mail if you order this guy. So while the Vitola in my hand is different and the year on the secondary band is also different, the cigar blend itself appears to be the exact same year after year. And furthermore, the cigar blend that is the Quesada Oktoberfest maintains its singular focus and has maintained said focus since its inception and release in 2011. And that is the ability to provoke you to pair it with beer. And not any beer will work. This is an Oktoberfest cigar after all. So that means Matzenbier, or beer that is brewed in March and then fermented and lagered, traditionally underground, in Germany for Oktoberfest, which actually is in September, not October, so go figure, yeah. And while the Germans do insist on kein Bier vor vier, or no beer before 4, this is still a country that is powered by, well, Frühschoppen, which is drinking beer for breakfast. So I don't feel too guilty cracking open a cold one at 3 p.m. on a Friday. Oh, speaking of which, my beer might not be nearly as cold as it was earlier. Let's get to it, shall we? Now, I will be delivering a V-cut to this cigar, because I've punched them in the past and it wasn't enough smoke production to be found and the draw was a little too tight, and I've cut them just with a straight guillotine and there was just entirely too loose of a draw. So this time around, I'm hoping that I'm able to get precisely what I want. Ooh, and right off the bat with those cold draws, I can tell that the V-cut is going to be the way to go. Nice, clean amount of resistance without being too tight. And the tightness of the cold draws is pretty ideal feeling on the palate. I was a little concerned about how tight the cigar felt. The others as well were a little bit tightly bound and finished. So that could be the reason why I didn't get a good draw on one of the cigars at least. Oh, wow. Bready, slightly sweet, but not too sweet. Malty, too. Again, this is just perfect with just beer. Oh, I gotta try this cigar. Holy guacamole. Ugh, my lighter, it is not working properly. I am low on the butane. Ja, and we are underway. Jawohl. Not gonna lie, first initial 3 to 5 minutes of this cigar are spicy. There's a good bit of black peppercorn spice and flavor in this cigar to start with, and the herbal tones that were detected beforehand are there. It's a little bit of an oregano-like taste, not full-blown pizza or pasta sauce, but just a hint of the stuff there. There's also a good bit of doughiness to the cigar, and we're talking rich, dark, spelt bread. For those of you who've never had spelt bread, just note that it can either be light and fluffy and kind of grainy as well, or it can be something that's very dense and heavy and made with things like molasses. This cigar manages to have a bit of both in its initial impressions. There's some sweetness and a little bit of that molasses sour and sweet taste that goes with that kind of bread, at least in beer bread form, and there is some salinity to the cigar that makes you really appreciate what's right next to you, which hopefully is a Matzimpia. Now, before we get into discussing the first third and the fantastic flavors that I'm detecting right now, let me explain to you all why we are going to discuss the 2023 edition of the Quesada Oktoberfest and not the 2024. The reason is simple. We stocked up on this cigar like all hell last year, and it sold really well. But we did overpurchase a little bit, which at the time, come November, we were like, oh shit, we have a bunch of this left over. What are we gonna do? This proved to be a blessing in disguise because this cigar has aged wonderfully. A lot of the sharper undertones that I found last year in the cigar and the spice intensity have mellowed out nicely. It's a much smoother, more round cigar flavor profile than ever before. So we are doing this year as a very special last of the last, only 70 cigars in stock sort of promo. So if this strikes your fancy and you like the review and it sounds good to you and you like pairing a cigar with beer, get it while you can. So, as the first third of the cigar really settles into its routine and provides a balance of flavors and what have you, the spice levels within the cigar die back and out comes a rye bread spice. This is slightly salty, but not overbearingly salinity focused. It's got a nice mineral touch to it, and with the oregano-like taste still tickling around back there somewhere inside the smoke, produces a very lovely flavor profile. I've been enjoying the maltiness of the cigar as well. It pairs well with the beer pairs well with it. It goes back and forth nicely. But now the cigar is starting to dry out a little bit. It's not as sweet as before. It's more of a aftertaste sort of sweetness. And with this dryness comes a very clean, crisp, doughy taste that is part rye bread, but it's also slightly tannin-like. It's not all cedar, it's not all oak, it's just a woodiness that maybe generic, I don't know, but whatever it is, it tastes great and makes you thirsty for more beer. All right, start to the second, third / midway mark on this blend. And I'm detecting that, once again, it is a flip-flop job. By flip-flop job, I mean the cigar goes back and forth between being kind of malty and bready and doughy one minute and then peppery and spicy the next. It does shift back and forth between the two, sometimes mixing them together, sometimes one is more distinguished than the other, but it definitely is a combo of bready, doughy, slightly malty, sweetness, and bread-like notes, and spice. Like German food, though, there is no Szechuan peppercorn taste or cayenne or anything really hot in the cigar spice-wise. It's more black pepper, white pepper, mixed peppercorn medley tastes, and strength in spice. Speaking of strength, the strength of the cigar in regard to its ability to provide you with a bit of a buzz is more on the medium side. There definitely is something going on inside of this stick in regard to its nicotine that is going to give you a bit of a buzz, especially when combined with beer, and that's a good thing, especially if you're in party mode. The body on the cigar, though, is very much a medium affair, and flavor profiles, for as flavorful as they are, do still maintain a medium equilibrium, at least at this point and throughout the first half of the cigar. I am glad that I used a V-cut this time. It is proving to be an ideal draw, and smoke production is on point. It really does cling to pretty much every appendage that you have, as well as your olfactory senses. let's talk retrohales, because that is something that is going to pick up on more of the pumpernickel taste from the rye bread end of the cigar than anywhere else. It's not a strong pumpernickel note, but it is there. And that dark breadiness really goes well with this type of blend. I must give it to Quesada for being able to somehow achieve this flavor profile that you don't find all that often in cigars. It's tasty without being overpowering. That's probably the best way to put it. Now, as this cigar continues to evolve and is right now right in the middle of the final third, the dryness within the blend really is the most notable first form of flavor profile. It's not even a flavor profile, actually. It's more of just a sensation. And according to Senor Quesada, when I met with him back in 2023 at the PCA trade show, this was actually the reason why he wanted to create the Oktoberfest cigar in the first place. It's dry. It's intended to make you thirsty, so you drink more beer. So if you have ever been hesitant about smoking a cigar that is a little on the drier side, this might be a good stick to start with, especially if you do enjoy beer and pairing cigars with beer, because together they work really well. This makes you thirsty. Guess what? You've got a brewski right next door to you. Oh yeah, problem solved. Now, outside of the dryness, there is more of the doughy, bready, spicy rye bread taste behind this. It's not that different, though, than what I detected in the second third, and that's true for every cigar I've smoked, and this is the fourth one that I've had. That's not to say that this is a bad thing. It just really isn't that much different. If anything, it's maybe a little bit darker at this moment and slightly oilier, sweeter, and more resinous. The ash continues to be a beauty, and outside of suddenly deciding to tunnel on me right about there, I didn't need to do any form of a touch-up to the cigar. The draw has also been great, and heat intensity, I can put my fingers right up near the cone and doesn't feel like anything's going on inside. And no, that is not a beer buzz talking. That is the God's honest truth. On to parting puffs and a final assessment. I like the parting puffs in the cigar, actually. I didn't think I would after the first stick I smoked last year, because they were kind of sharp and just a little too bitter for me. However, a year of aging has done a ton for this cigar and its ability to smooth itself out with a little bit of cedar case elegance action. Being that I have aged these cigars in, go figure, a case elegance humidor, which we pride ourselves on having more cedar than anybody else inside. The flavor profiles in the parting puffs is very cedar forward and does have some oaky tannin-like notes without being too overpowering. This is a nice dry finish for a cigar that makes me want to keep drinking my beer, but also makes me think, you know, I wonder at times where all the maltiness went. Up until this point, it has been, again, a flip-flop job back and forth between malty, doughy, bready, spicy, pumpernickel, rye bread, pretzel, salty, all these things. But now it's much more of a clean, classy, slightly bitter finish. This is a good portion of the cigar that a lot of people tend to disregard and toss down entirely too soon. So I encourage you to smoke through parting puffs if you pick up a 5-pack. Retrohales do pick up on far more spice than ever before, and there is a hint of meaty umami notes behind this that can be attributed to the salinity of the cigar. Now, let's talk construction, because whereas the cigar has burned very nicely and the ash has been beautiful, I tap it off and suddenly I realize deep inside it's burning, but the exterior wouldn't do much of anything. So I had to fire up the rim of it. That's all right though. The flavor profile didn't change whatsoever for both touch-ups, and I was able to get right back on track and didn't really have to do any touch-ups for uneven burns whatsoever. The next thing that must be discussed is the age of the cigar, which I'm glad that we didn't sell out of this stick earlier in the year or last year for that matter. This additional year of age has done a ton of good for this blend. Not only are the rougher edges of the cigar smoothed out, it's just not as sharp and pepper forward as it once was. And the maltiness within the blend that I detect that has a little hint of molasses here and there really does shine, not all the time, but is there. Now, is the cigar gimmicky in any way with its banding and branding? Well, maybe. Yes, definitely. But that's okay. There's a time and a place for a celebratory cigar where you really don't give a shit about having the fanciest looking cigar band or clever namesake backing it all up. This is a smoke that's intended to be accompanying you at an Oktoberfest party of some sort. So all told, I'm gonna give this a 4.2 out of 5 stars. If it was last year, I would have given it a flat 4.0, but because of this additional age that was been placed upon the cigar, and thanks to all of the cedar-like nuances that are now shining inside, I bump it up an extra 0.2. Definitely one that I would consider smoking again and again, especially with a beer. But pairing it with something other than a beer is kind of hard to imagine. But then again, with the name Oktoberfest, why would you in the first place?